I am Sean Kaiser, great friend of James Hollywood Flynn. Worked together at KFIZ Radio, and he and I had said whoever passes first, the other one gives the eulogy at that person's funeral. Certainly, I wish I wasn't up here today doing it, but knowing that that was his wish, I'm happy to be here and just have a couple of fun stories. Feel free to laugh, cry, interact, but how I remember my great friend Jimmy Flynn. And a great friend of ours from Las Vegas can't be here tonight, so if you're wondering why that guy over there is filming, it's because Spike Meeser said, hey, I want to see the eulogy, so here we go. So as I said, first met Jay KFIZ. I'm working there, and he was a frequent caller of Chuck Freeman's sports talk show and called in a lot, and he would go to the basketball games and talk with the radio guys, and eventually we said, hey, you seem to have a cool interest in radio. Would you like to come work here? Sure enough, he said, yeah. So as a high school kid, came to KFIZ and started part-time as a producer, a board op, running the commercials, and he was a real quick study. And he'd run commercials for the high school games, Badgers, Brewers, Packers, Bucks. And we all know he loved his Packers, right? Huge Packers fan. So in the studio back then, there was just a tiny little monitor up in the far corner, maybe 13 inches. It's not something that you can really see the game on. So what Hollywood would do is he'd go back to the break room. They had a 19-inch TV. He'd put it on a chair. He'd wheel it all the way to the studio. He'd put that thing right on the console, right on the counter, right next to him, and he was just, I mean, if this were the TV, he is that close watching the Packers game. And don't dare go interrupt them during any time that they're playing, because he is going to completely ignore you. You can only go in and talk with him during commercials or at halftime or after the game. And I think all of us know that he could have a little bit of a temper. And if the Packers game didn't go the way that he wanted it to, when I showed up at the station on Monday morning, I might see, oh, some of the office furniture might have a little bit of a bent leg or two. Although he swore there was a keyboard that was completely smashed. And I said, really? And he swore. Actually, we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and he goes, I didn't do it. He goes, why? He goes, statute of limitations. Why wouldn't I tell you now if you didn't do it? I still think that he broke it. He had a great sense of humor, and one time we were calling a high school football game, and I mean, it was just it was a circus, and we're sitting there, Bob Hoffmaster and me, we're doing the game, and all of a sudden, what do we hear in our headset but actual circus music? He's playing that back in the station, and we just lost it on the air. Him being a quick study allowed me to get out of the studio. It's just really neat. He kind of followed the same path that I did. I started at the station when I was in high school, but eventually became full-time. So him getting to do that allowed me to live out my dream, which was play-by-play. I got to go out and call games, so really appreciate him doing such a great job. Of course, we know he had that great deep voice, and we knew we got to get this guy on the air at some point. Did a great job running the commercials, but hey, let's get him on the air, and eventually he became someone that did Saturday morning sports, would fill in on the sports during the weekdays. He did it all. He was jack of all trades, would do commercials. News Talk 1450. There was a really great Three Amigo friendship at KFIZ. It was with James, myself, and another part-timer. Some of you may know him because I think it's a distant relative, James Klutsky. We knew him back then as Kennedy. Now he's known as Spike the Barber, but he was a part-timer as well. And I think it was because I started off as a part-timer that I just really related to these guys. I'd been in their footsteps, so they were like both brothers to me, and we had a lot of fun. None more so than it was a Sunday morning. None of us are working. They came over to my house to watch a movie. I may have had a beer or 10. I'm not for sure. And I get the idea, hey, let's go down to the radio station and have some fun, because, that's a smart thing to do when you're under the influence. So we go down to the radio station, and it was right around this time of the year. I remember because it was in October. because in the front of the station was all of the prizes that they give away for the Halloween contest. So here us three doofuses are riding around the bicycles. We're throwing a Nerf football. There's a skateboard we're riding on. And then we get the idea. There was another part-time kid. God bless him, but he was very gullible. His name was Brad Hartman. And we said, let's prank Brad Hartman. Let's prank call Brad Hartman and record it. You know, I mean, you're in a studio. So Kennedy starts it off, and the premise was Hartman, the next night, Packers were playing Monday Night Football, and Hartman is another part-time job of his. He'd get hired to run the cable for ABC. So we knew this, so this was the whole premise of this prank call. So we call him up, and we say, hey, yeah, what time were you supposed to report for tomorrow? No, you got to show up at a different time at a different gate. And then I get on there and I tell them, oh, well, you know, there's going to be this after party, and you're going to get to meet John Madden. Now, yeah, don't talk to him, but you get to meet John Madden and all these other people. And of course, Hartman is he thinks it's the greatest thing. This went on for 30 minutes. We had this kid going. We hang up. Of course, we're just laughing so much. Now, keep in mind, James was there, but he wasn't an active participant. And to his credit, everyone who knows him won't be surprised. Kennedy and I the next day, we didn't think twice about it, but Hollywood had he knew in his heart what we did was wrong, and he actually called Brad Hartman and said, hey, we played that prank on you, and you know, last thing I want to see is you show up and not get to see all this stuff. I mean, I'm thankful that Hartman, I was his boss, so he could have gotten me fired. I'm glad that didn't happen, but it meant a lot. I thought about, like, wow, you know, James felt so bad for this kid that he was willing to do it. So I'm glad that he did. And then when I moved to Green Bay, that opened up an opportunity for him to do video sports. So then he got to do play-by-play, got to be on television. And actually, one of those games just surfaced on YouTube this past weekend. He sent me the link and was real excited to see it. And I'm hoping that some more games that he called will be out there, because you know, he's going to live on forever. I played a bunch of softball back in the day. We had a great team. He was a super fan. He attended many of our games. He was like a member of the team. All the guys knew him. He always enjoyed our post-game socials at the press box, and he was an assassin on the dartboard. That guy beat everybody when it came to darts, and his most famous victory was over Travis Diener. I'm sure many of us remember the high school star. And it was standing room only at the box. Diener and Flynn and going back and forth, boom, 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 and Hollywood, woo! It was a Ric Flair, woo! After he beat Travis, he was so proud of that. He was a man of many aliases, as we know. Of course, birth name James. Most of the family called him Jay. At the radio station, he got the nickname Hollywood. Sometimes we call him Wood for short. And later in life, when we started going out to Las Vegas, he picked up a new name out there, Jimmy Flynn. So a guy with many names. Our first trip out to Vegas was February 2012. We went out for a Super Bowl party. There was this website, covers.com. We watched this internet show, and this sports handicapper, Dave Malinsky, just real articulate, funny guy, and he was going to be at this party. And I said, man, this is our chance to get to meet Dave. And Hollywood had gone to Vegas many times with Bill and Kathy, and I had been out there a few times, but we'd never gone together, and we needed to go. So we said, dude, this is the time to go. So we go out, and we're walking into Caesar's Palace, and we look over, and boom, there's Malinsky, and it's just like we saw a celebrity. Holy cow, you know, just real excited. We go sit down at the party, met another sports handicapper that I knew, Stephen Nover, and then another handicapper that we had no idea was going to be there, Spike Meeser, but we knew of this guy from the website that he worked on. Meeser's there. He comes over, sits down. He's impressed that we know who he is, and having great conversation. Eventually they say, Meeser says, got to get that right, Spike will kill me if I don't. He says, you want to meet Dave? So he goes up, gets Dave to come over, and Dave sat at our table for half an hour. Dave was not someone to be very social. So, I mean, this whole party, he's just standing over with the producer, not talking to any of the guests. But here we were, two schmucks from Wisconsin, and Malinsky took a half hour to just sit there and break the balls, as we say. And it was a really neat thing. And we played in a poker tournament after that, went back to the hotel, and we couldn't sleep because we were just so excited, just recapping the night and thinking about it all. Well, this Meeser guy, he gives us his card and says, hey, keep in touch. So I email him and I ask, would you like to go out to dinner after the Super Bowl that Sunday night? He says, yeah, let's meet at the Pepper Mill. So we have a great dinner with Meeser for a couple of hours. He drives us back over to the hotel, and we're sitting there thinking, where's the catch? Vegas, a city with a lot of shady people, right? I mean, can this guy really be this nice? I mean, like I said, a couple of schmucks from Wisconsin. Why is he being that nice to us? Where's the catch? Where's the hook? But as we learned over time, Spike Meeser, the absolute real deal, one of the great guys that we were very fortunate to get to know. And so we kept going back. Our next trip was in November of 2013. And another thing that we all probably knew about James, I call it Eeyore. If you ever watch Winnie the Pooh, you know, he could kind of be that sad donkey, and, you know, doom and gloom. So we're flying out of Appleton, and it's raining in Vegas. And Vegas gets, you know, 2 drops of rain, and they got to shut down the airport. Well, I was dating a gal in California at the time, so I was going to be going to LA for a week after the Vegas trip. So if this flight gets canceled on Saturday, I'm going to find a way to get out there anyway. But for James, this is it. If this flight gets canceled, he's not going out. And we're at the airport, the flight's delayed, and, you know, he starts going into that sad donkey mode, and I'm trying to lift him up. Well, then they start boarding. They board about a quarter of the flight. And then the flight gets delayed again, so those people had to come off, and we're like, oh man, how much must that suck? You actually had your luggage on the plane and you had to go out. So now we get the whole plane boarded. We shouldn't have said that. All of us had to get off the plane, and we're like, are you kidding me? So now you can just imagine, you know, he is just all sad puppy. This isn't going to happen. Finally, they say, we're going to try it one more time. And the pilot gets on the intercom, and he says, as long as we get this bird up in the air before they cancel it, they have to let us land. So he's like, we're getting the heck out of here. You know, usually you back up from the gate, and they're real nice and smooth. This was like, back up, slam it, and forward. That guy, I've never gone from gate to air faster ever. Hollywood says, this guy must have a hot date in Vegas. And he's got to get to this. That's why we're getting out of here. And then I'll never forget, so then I go on to LA, and he's got to fly back to Appleton. And much like myself, Hollywood hated winter. He gets back to Appleton, it's like 11 degrees. He's got to scrape ice off of his windows. I mean, he's just had this great weekend in Vegas, and now this, and I'll never forget, I called him on a Tuesday. I'm sitting on the beach in Malibu, 72 degrees, beautiful sunshine. And it's the only time he ever hung up on me in life, because I call him, and actually Bill answered, and I'm like, hey, I'm in Malibu. He's like, what? Where are you? I'm like, yeah, I'm in California. And he hands the phone to Jay, and Jay's just like, I don't want to hear it. August 2014, we make our 3rd trip together to Las Vegas, and this was our first time flying out of Milwaukee, going on Southwest. And I don't know if you've ever flown Southwest, but they have you line up pre-boarding, doing this stuff. So we're standing there, and one of the Southwest ladies comes up to him, and she says, sir, you've got broad shoulders. We're going to have you be part of the pre-boarders. And of course, in his sense of humor, he says, oh, that's just a nice way of calling me a fat guy. So, but the beauty was then, like, they knew that in his system, broad shoulders guy. And that time they didn't let me board with him, but then every other time we went on Southwest, I got to go. So it was like, all right, we're getting the fat boy treatment. Let's get on the plane right away. 2014, it was highlighted by meeting up with Spike and Malinsky again. We had a 3.5-hour great dinner as the sun was setting over the strip at Umami Burger. Fantastic stories. And Jay, just like me, he loved to reminisce, and you know, almost every time we talked, once or twice a month, and we would always get into these stories and recall everything, that, whether it was the good days at KFIZ or the trips. I don't know how many times we've gone over those again and again and again, but you could just always hear the smile on his voice when we would talk about that stuff. Spring of 2018 was our 4th trip, and we included in that a trek out to Los Angeles. I don't know how many of you know that Hollywood was obsessed with the O.J. Simpson case. I think he's seen every documentary made about O.J., and so he wanted to go to where O.J. lived and where the murders happened. So we drove out there, and you know, we got to go to Bundy and Rockingham, and you got to see the mighty Pacific. You know, he'd never been to California before, so it was a real treat for him to get to see California, and we had a lot of fun on that trip. And then our final trip out, 2019 Super Bowl. Once again, the sad puppy, it was 50 below. That was when we were in that horrible stretch of cold weather 2 years ago. And he's already thinking a week ahead as he's looking at the forecast. They're going to cancel the flight. We're not going to be able to get out there. I said, they have de-icing. They fly planes in cold weather Hollywood. It's going to happen. And we were so glad to get the heck out of this cold weather and go hang out there. I know that that was his biggest win. He hit $1,600 on a slot machine when he was out there. And again, many of you may or may not know, he could be a bit frugal, so we had to guilt him into buying us lunch that day after the big $1,600. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I guess I can. All right. Man, you may have seen, it's on the picture wall as on there. Also on that trip, we got to meet poker pro Scotty Wynn. It was really neat. We're just in the lobby of a hotel, and all of a sudden I spotted Scotty. Of course, Hollywood was a big poker fan, so that was really neat that we got to meet him. And then we also saw the Beach Boys, sat front row for the Beach Boys, and John Stamos was playing with them. You know, John Stamos, the real hunky actor. And of all the people, no offense to Hollywood, I mean, you think John Stamos, you get done with your drumsticks, you give them to, you know, probably a good-looking woman, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what I would do. Yeah. And he gave them to Hollywood. He gave them to Hollywood. And of course, you know, true to James then found the most beautiful woman there, and he gifted that. You know, he got a picture with that. And of course, that gal was just, you know, beyond herself. So, yeah, what a great guy. A couple more here. He was a huge Michael Jordan fan. I was talking with Kathy before. She said she thinks that there's probably 20 pairs of Jordans at home, and they're always clean. I don't think I've ever seen a speck of dirt.
Yeah, I used to clean his shoes.
I've never seen a speck of dirt on that guy's shoes. It's amazing. Big wrestling fan. He went with us to WrestleMania 22 in Chicago. A couple of my friends that are here tonight were along with that. It was a great WrestleMania card. We had an absolute blast. He'd also come to our annual WrestleMania parties every year, and he fit right in with my cast of characters. Now, again, we know that James liked to nod off, and so we would always have, and he played along anytime he came to a WrestleMania party. All right, what's the over/under? When's the first time that Hollywood's going to start falling asleep? And let me tell you, the under always cashed. He always took the under. He always took the under. He's the biggest mama's boy I ever knew. I mean, he is the poster boy for mama's boy. Not that he didn't like his dad, but
I know.
He loved Kathy, and every time when we'd go on a trip, he'd call or text her as soon as he landed, and I'm thinking, wow, after these trips, I never even told my mom that I'm going. You know, geez, I'll tell you what kind of son I am compared to him. He loved her cooking, especially her lasagna. Of course, he loved your desserts. He was so proud to take her out. So when I moved up to Green Bay, did radio and television, and then I got into fundraising, and I produced a big event called Dancing with Our Stars. It's like a TV show, but we get local people. So he brought Kathy up a couple of times, including the final year. And I know you probably saw that picture when Peter Murgatroyd and Max Schmirkowski were there, so they got the chance to meet them and sit right over by him. You had prime seating for that.
Yeah, right.
You're welcome.
Oh yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, oh yeah.
Man, my last conversation with him was a week ago Sunday, and it was about you. You had gotten bitten by a dog.
Oh yeah.
And he was so mad. He said, I want to do this to the dog, and I want to do this to the dog's owner. And we only talked for about 20 minutes, but he needed to vent about that. And the guy was, I've known him for more than 20 years. He was a best friend. He was a brother. I have a biological brother, but I don't have much of a relationship with him. To me, Hollywood was my brother. Similar interests, beliefs, sense of humor. We got along so very well. He was like a soulmate. And I know that they listed me as special friend in the obituary. I'm not that kind of a special friend. Platonic relationship, right? You two match. Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Well, that's us old people.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, we're not thinking of it. Sorry.
But he was like a soulmate. I mean, just somebody that I connected with better than anybody. We text daily, talk a few times a month. And recently, with him joining the fantasy football league out in Las Vegas.
And he was #1, wasn't he?
He's in first place. He's playing me this week. Of course, of all the weeks he's playing me, this is the week he's playing me. But he's beating me right now by 7. So I hope Travis Kelce doesn't score tonight and Tony scores some more. But no, he was real excited to be a part of that. And you know, there's going to be a massive void in my life without that. It's paralyzing to think, you know, without having Hollywood in my life. Along with all the great conversations, I'm going to miss 2 different voicemails that he would leave for me. One was Beano Cook. I don't know if any of you. So Beano Cook was an old-time college football analyst, and he was just a real character with a unique voice. And Hollywood did it even better than me. But this is football season. I mean, you got Wisconsin and Iowa. You know, Wisconsin's coached by Barry Alvarez. You know, the great Joe Paterno at Penn State. I mean, this is football season. So he'd leave me these voicemails, and we'd get a good laugh out of that. And the other one was the inspiration for Jimmy and myself for play-by-play, Pat Summerall. We just loved Pat's voice and his Spartan style and his minimalist, and Jay could really do a great Pat Summerall impression. I know his favorite call of Summerall's was from Super Bowl 31 Packers over the Patriots. It's an 86-yard touchdown or something, I think at the time, the longest touchdown in Super Bowl history. And what does Pat say? All he says, Favre, Antonio Freeman, they're not going to catch him. And so he would always do that play-by-play for me. And then Summerall was also really good. They would do these, I call it a cold open, that they would record before the football game, you know, and they've got video or whatnot, and Summerall would narrate it. And he loved to impersonate those narrations. And one of his favorite was the final game at RFK Stadium for the team formerly known as the Redskins. And so Summerall would say, today we say goodbye to one of the all-time great NFL stadiums. A stadium that's left us with images that cannot be forgotten. Great names, great games, great players, and on and on and on. And then he closes it. Today we say goodbye to the 35-year history of RFK Stadium. And he did that always so well. So for the final Dancing with Our Stars, 10th and final a couple of years ago, I said, we got to do an open like that. And I'm having you voice it. And I apologize in advance if this is going to bring tears to some people. The video is irrelevant, and you probably can't see it on here. I'll just still show it so you don't have to look at me the whole time. But I've got it cranked as loud as it can go, and this is 1 minute of our great friend and brother, Jimmy Flynn, voicing the intro for the final Dancing with Our Stars.
Today we say goodbye to one of the all-time
Oops.
events. An event that's left us with images that cannot be forgotten. Great costumes. Great choreography. Great fundraising. Great performances. Great people. Today we say goodbye to the 10-year history of Dancing with Our Stars.
Gives me chills hearing that. So with that, I've written one for him, and we would do these every once in a while for each other. But today we say goodbye to one of the all-time great guys, a guy that's left us with images that cannot be forgotten. Great laugh, great shoes, great appetite, great buzz cut.
Yeah.
Great broad shoulders, great big heart. Today we say goodbye to the 40-year history of James Hollywood Flynn. I love you, I miss you, and may your spirit live in all our hearts forever. that, we are finished. On behalf of the Flynn family, I thank everybody. We thank you all for coming. And I know that Kathy says she doesn't want to take any of that food home, so please stop on your way out. Thank you all for your time, and
Thank you.
we love you, Jay.
Yeah.